With how well silver has performed in 2025, it may be hard for many of us to imagine silver's price collapsing. But that's exactly what could happen if what I'm about to share with you occurs. I'll talk about it as we explore. As silver stackers, we should prepare for any eventuality. Now, I'm feeling really good about silver this year, in spite of some of the pullbacks we've seen in the price. Consolidation, market trends, the psychological aspect of the market, it all plays a role. And I'm also more open-minded than ever before to the idea of silver price suppression. We know there's manipulation that occurs. I've documented it many times on this channel, especially with JP Morgan, but other institutions as well, that has caused the price of silver to move up and down because of selfish reasons. And that is for personal gain, usually, and what occurs. But as far as a coordinated effort to keep the price of silver down, well, it is a possibility. I don't know that we've seen full, outright, other than circumstantial evidence or anecdotal evidence, but nonetheless, I believe that probably there's likely something going on that is in part keeping the price of silver down. But remember, it is a small market, and it does not take a whole lot to affect the price of silver dramatically. But I believe what we're looking at right now is a situation where we're starting to see the creation of new support for silver in the range somewhere between, if you want to broaden it out, and notwithstanding some of the technical analysis, the cup and handle, and the wedge patterns that we're starting to see, is I believe somewhere around $30 is a very, very strong floor now for silver. And that may be even overly bullish for some of you out there who have been in this market a long time and have seen the volatility of silver for so long. But that very well could be tested with a silver price shock that will blow your mind if we start to see something happen next month. That's right. It is the Fed meeting that is coming on the 17th of September. That's 1 month from today, folks. Actually, it's just less than 1 month from today. And that is something that is going to be happening, that many people feel that finally the Federal Reserve will lower rates by a quarter point, maybe even a half point, according to some metrics that we saw recently. But that was all turned on its head when we saw them move to the other direction. In other words, now we're starting to see, instead of a half point rate cut, nobody is thinking that, according to the Fed Watch tool. But, this is where, the probabilities go from surveys that the CME group does on how many people that are paying attention to the market and what they feel is going to happen, and this target rate. And, and the thing is, as we think to ourselves, why should we care what the Fed does? Silver stands on its own, literally like what you're seeing here. And by the way, if the price were to collapse, well, what would happen? This. That's right. That doesn't seem to have much impact on the price of silver, does it? What you just saw there, that visual of the dollar coming down on silver. Yes, that's right. The price of silver could drop, but when it's all said and done, it's exactly the same silver that was there before. Why? Because we measure our wealth in ounces, not necessarily dollars. And that may be a psychological technique that you could trick your mind into thinking, well, hey, that's right, silver's long-standing, but we know price does matter at the time that you need to sell it. Well, my friends at Summit Metals know this. They actually will buy your silver as well, although I'm not encouraging you to sell your silver. I'm encouraging you to hold on to it for the long haul, because that's really what matters the most, and is the long-run holdings of silver and wealth preservation. You can buy silver there as well. They have a great selection. And so check them out and experience their great customer service and fast shipping for yourself at summitmetals.com. So let's get into this. Well, with 92.1% of survey participants that believe that the Federal Reserve is going to lower rates this coming September 17th at that meeting, only 7.9% believe that they will not. But that is a small probability, but it is a possibility. And that's right, that they may leave rates unchanged for one reason or another. And I can talk about some of those reasons. First and foremost, being among them, is the PPI numbers. The Federal Reserve Board of Governors may very well vote to leave rates unchanged through this latest report that says inflation is running hot, according to the personal for the PPI numbers and core inflation. The CPI numbers are showing a different measure because they are showing that inflation is cooling off. Remember, the producer price index is what companies are paying for goods and services. They're taking on that, and I think that's a testament to what the tariffs are doing. They're causing prices to go up because of those tariffs for goods and services coming into the United States. And that could be even some raw materials that are produced in the United States that are causing the price to go up. And some of these companies, and likely those companies in-house inside the United States, are in part eating some of those costs, at least in part. But more effectively would be foreign companies that are shipping the product to the United States. They may be eating some of those costs for now. How long will that last? I don't know. And, companies, many of these nations or companies, they operate on fairly small profit margins. So you have to take that into account as well. And it may be a time where they may not be able to do that anymore, and that passes the cost on to you, which is a cost increase. Not inflation, by the way, but CPI is an aggregate of all the different causes for price increases, inflation being part of that. So if the Federal Reserve decides to leave rates unchanged, and right now right around an 8% chance that would happen, then I think that would be a shock and surprise, but still a possibility that could cause silver prices to crumble, to collapse. What would that mean? That would mean falling below the support. The prices fall below support, and if that happens, we're talking about under $30 an ounce in a short amount of time. That would be quite a shock to the system for sure, and that would have people up in arms over what's going on and maybe even lose faith. I believe some stackers will get so fed up and tired of silver they would just leave and stop stacking and sell it and just give up on it because they felt like all these gains, what for? For nothing. But the thing is you have to think about it. I think that would be a very short, small, temporary time where we see the price collapse because they're baking in. And this is what I talked about in a video that some people didn't understand before, that I said that silver's price moving up was actually bad news because they were baking in that the Federal Reserve was going to lower rates. And they baking in so early on that this surprise shock move would rock the silver market for sure. And we'd see people just scattering and panicking and panic selling on the way down. And I believe that is quite a possibility that we should prepare for in September. And you have to think about it politically too. Remember, Jerome Powell and Donald Trump are not good friends. Yes, Jerome Powell was appointed by President Trump in his first term, but it was only under the suggestion of the Treasury Secretary at the time. And it turns out that many people feel that Jerome Powell is too late, not just now to lower rates and to get the board on board with doing that, but also before when to raise rates. And so, therefore, that kind of move and him doing it again may just be to thumb the nose at the president, especially considering what's going on with the criticisms of the Fed and their big $3.1 billion renovation program that they've been doing over the past 5 years, and the most recent one is about $2.7 billion. All of that, I think, is weighing on where I think that the Fed chair is taking it personally now, and I would not be surprised if he convinced a majority of the board to vote no, just like it was mixed this last time, where 2 board members said, "Hey, we should be lowering now." Now, if this new Stephen Moran gets appointed as a board governor, that's going to make it much more difficult to happen. It may be a closer vote, but still, I think if in some way it may be a way to thumb to thumb down the president, just like McCain did to stop Obamacare from being overturned. He was the one that did it. It was purely out of spite for the president. And, so you have to think politically, too. We're talking about domestic politics here as one of the causes of the cases that you could see for this happening. That would cause silver's price to absolutely plummet, I think, at least for a time of panic, downward. How long will that last? I don't think very long. I think that silver's price would consolidate when they take a look at the fundamentals of what's going on in the market, and I think we'll see it rebound quickly. But whenever they panic, that's when you need to stay on path, stay true north with silver, and hold on. Never give up if that were to happen. But that's a scenario that could play out. It's highly unlikely. In fact, I would almost, not quite there. I'd almost be willing to bet that they're not going to lower rates, but or that they will lower rates rather. I'd almost be willing to bet that they will lower rates by a quarter point, but an 8% chance right now is something that should not be ignored, and it is quite possible the scenario could play itself out. So just an interesting little thought exercise for you. But no matter what happens no matter what the Fed does, we should not let that dictate what we do with our silver, and that is to hold on to it. And that is a lesson I want to share with you in this video. Silver is something that has lasted for thousands of years, and what the Fed does or doesn't do should not dictate what we do or don't do with silver. So I hope you found this video encouraging, insightful, and educational. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to each and every one of you for taking the time to watch, and to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.